Hey guys, today I wanted to make a quick video going over the different animation assets you use in Unreal Engine. Now when I first got started, I was pretty confused because there are a lot of different ones that use animation, so I wanted to go over them to give you a broad overview so that you have more clarity when you dive into the engine. So first things first, everything comes from an animation sequence. Think of this as your FBX file. Now you can get those through Maya or Blender. You make them and export them, but you can also create them directly in Engine in a level sequence using the control rig. I have some tutorials on those. And this animation sequence is primarily used in two assets. So first you have your character blueprint, and then you have your animation blueprint. Now what is the difference between these two? Your character blueprint holds all the logic for your character and also some animations. So it will handle things like attack animations or specific actions like pulling a lever, things like that. But it also holds overall all the logic for your character. So input actions. It will handle things like healing, inventory, stuff like that. That is handled through here. This is heavily code-based. Now the animation blueprint is primarily animation asset based. It does have a little bit of code, but it's much less code. Now this handles your character state. So think of it as when your character transitioned into a different movement state. So for example, if they're jumping or if they're running, if they're crouching, things like that. Your character blueprint will code the logic, and then they communicate to one another so that when an input action is pressed, your animation blueprint knows that, and then it will transition and drive the movement from here. Your character blueprint it'll set the condition for the animation, but the actual animation is driven through your animation blueprint. Now, how do they communicate to one another? It's through three things. So first, in the details panel in your character blueprint, you assign an animation blueprint to it, and that's primarily how you get it on. Now, for the animation blueprint, how does it know whether your character is supposed to enter into a jumping state? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You create two booleans. Now, boolean is a variable that is either true or false, it's either or. You would code the logic in your character blueprint. For example, jumping, the input action of jumping, you would create a boolean that would be set to true or false when you press the button to jump. You press the space bar, then you set your boolean to be true. Because you're casting to your character blueprint, this animation blueprint is able to grab that variable, the jumping variable, from your character blueprint. And then you create your own animation blueprint variable that you then set to be true or false depending on the original variable is set to true or false. And so that is how it knows whether to enter into that transition state, because they communicate through these booleans, which are able to be connected through casting to it. So I hope that makes sense. It'll make more sense once you start coding your own character. That's the general process. Now, these animation sequences don't directly go into these. They get made into other assets that are then able to be used. So, in order to use animation sequences and character blueprints, you need an animation montage. Now, what is an animation montage? It's basically an animation sequence. It just has more attributes to it where you can have code, and it works very well character blueprints. So this is great for things like attack animations, things like opening doors, pulling levers, that kind of thing. Now, animation sequences are used in animation blueprints in two ways. So they're actually used just as regular animation sequences, but they are also used as blend spaces. Now, a blend space is basically a group of animation sequences that your animation blueprint will pull from for states. Let me explain. If your character is strafing around an enemy, that's not just one animation, that's 4 different animations. You have your strafe screen left, your strafe screen right, front, back. So your blend space is the asset you use that holds all the different animation sequences you made of your strafing left, right, etc. And you plug that into your animation blueprint for the strafing state, and you get all 4 of them at once. So it's a very organized way to do things for like strafing, running, crouching, stuff like that. So that's basically the overview of all the different animation assets you use. It'll make more sense once you start practicing and making your own projects. So have fun with that, and as always, happy animating!